My name is Micah Lexier. I was born in Winnipeg, very proud of that, and I'm 49 years old. Now, the reason why I tell you that I'm 49 years old is that is significant in relation to this particular work we're looking at and my practice as an artist in general. I make a lot of work about myself and the passage of time. This particular piece is called 39 Wood Balls, and the 39 of the wood balls refers to the age that I was at the time I made the work. The beginning of the piece is not 0 or a quarter of an inch. It actually starts at a kind of unit which I picked kind of randomly as 2 inches. And then every year or every ball subsequent to that, I made the next ball 1/8 of an inch bigger. So it's 2 inches, 2 1/8, 2 1/4, 2 3/8, 2 1/2, and it builds. Now, the great thing about making works sometimes, especially the way that I make it, which is to create a kind of program and then get it built by others, is that there's lots of surprises. And one of the surprises for me was that at the beginning, the relationship between 1/8 and 2 inches is quite a lot. You know, it's 1/16. By the time the piece grows and the work builds up by 1/8 of an inch, we're up to 6 inches. Well, 1/8 of an inch on 6 inches is not very much, and you don't notice that change. So that is interesting on a couple levels. Just metaphorically, it's sort of like how we learn. We have a great steep learning curve and then things sort of tail off. So it has a relationship to being a human being, and that's what a lot of my work is about. I work with very simple forms that you think they're just formal relationships, but really they're a kind of a way of speaking about something larger, something very, very human. And so that is a nice sort of metaphor for we're born and we're not 0. We're born and we already are a thing, and then we kind of grow quite quickly, and then it kind of tails off our growing and we grow in different ways. The way that that's interesting just formally is that it creates a sculpture that has its own kind of shape. So instead of thinking of it as just a straight linear line just growing up at an even kind of angle, the sculpture itself has its own life. It has this beautiful form that you never could have done if you were just like, how big should I make those balls? By giving that decision over to a process, it creates itself. So the sculpture has a life of its own and a shape of its own that I never could imagine or never could have put on the sculpture. There's a couple details that I kind of want to point out about the piece, because I really do see it as a sculpture. It's not just an illustration of this concept, but it's a piece to be experienced all around. Clearly you kind of, not clearly, but I think that people are often attracted to the smaller and grow to the larger. But then when you actually look at the sculpture, there's little numbers stamped into the top of them, sort of helping you count up, but they're orientated this way. So it kind of just plays with how you're supposed to approach this work, and it just sort of lets you know that it is a sculpture and not what I would consider like a graphic or something like that. And I guess the very last thing I kind of want to point out is that the wood balls are not just clear spheres or solidly colored spheres, but they're actually made of wood. And the wood that I chose is maple, and one of the features of maple is that the growth rings are quite prominent. So there's this kind of notion of the passage of time that's true to myself, to the sculpture itself, and then within each ball, to the ball itself. Each ball is surprisingly unique, surprisingly individual, and the notion of the, not just the ring and the passage of the year, but all kinds of staining that happens in there. So they're actually fairly messy or real within this piece that's quite minimal. And to me, that's where the strength of the work lies, is that balance between it being minimal and unapproachable and having references to being a human being, and how all the messiness of a life lived is all contained in the one work.